Mike Rosehart show. We're live, like we are every Wednesday, a little after 7 o'clock. Apologies, we had some friends over for like a Christmas dinner, so a couple of minutes late here. I was just collecting my thoughts, and so I just made today's video about what is next. What now? As you guys know, I've been selling off my real estate portfolio. I continue to do that. I still have several properties left to go. I've got some duplexes and triplexes and things like that near Fanshawe for the most part at this point, and some duplex rentals as well, and a sixplex in Byron. So those will be the last few to go. But what next? What next for Mike Rosehart? Does he keep flipping? If you guys have been following me on this channel, you know that I am more than overjoyed to be done with the buy and hold real estate. I never want to have tenants. I would be open to having a cottage and doing the Airbnb thing. I'd be open to having short-term tenants potentially. I don't think it makes sense to have long-term tenants for me. At my stage where I'm at, I don't want to put myself in that line of fire. But it is a great way to build wealth. And my next steps are probably going to involve either leaving this country. You guys can't hear me? It says volume's a little low. Could be that my case is blocking the microphone. I don't know. I could take it out of the case. Can you hear me okay? Evening, volume's a little low. I don't know. So if anyone else is having trouble hearing me, let me know. The room is completely empty, so there should just be like a faint echo and me talking. Okay, so what is next? It's a great question. For one, I think I'm going to leave Canada, not just because of the political landscape that I've talked about in the last several weeks, not just because, I think that, the core values of Canadian society are degrading, not because of a million other reasons, but because of taxes. The tax environment here is not conducive to someone who wants to become a billionaire in their life. And so regardless of what happens in the next couple of years with, inflation worries running rampant. By the way, I'm going to cover this because I haven't covered it yet today. Bank of Canada came out today and said that they are not planning to increase interest rates until at least April. So we're talking about April now for potential rate increases, which means we get rate holds for 120 days in Canada, which translates to like a September being the first September next year, being the time we start to see the feeling of interest rates rising, potentially, maybe, which is the only thing that I can think of that would put a little bit of brakes pumping on the real estate fire. I wish that didn't mean that real estate prices were not going to keep climbing, because real estate prices are going to go crazy and inflation will continue to run because the government's doing nothing to address these issues. They're like, we're going to raise interest rates. Actually, no, we're not going to raise interest rates. Maybe we'll raise them probably in April, but then they'll probably just still hit further. Who knows? Very glad that I have a variable rate mortgage. It's a good thing for the variable rate mortgage holders, but it's also relatively good for the overall economy. Is also very, very good for, well, long term, no. Inflation causes many issues, but short term, yes. It's a shame I sold as many properties as I have. I've sold more than half my portfolio off now, and real estate's going to keep running. I probably get an extra 5 or 10% appreciation on my real estate portfolio, but I am very, very excited to be done with having property managers message me, with having tenants find my number, with just all the things that go along with owning a rental property, like dealing with internet at a student rental, or like just dealing with Enercare reliance on a hot water tank rental, like stupid little things that are, no one even thinks of, that are just annoying. And I'm glad to not be doing. As I've elevated through the net worth ladder, I no longer need to be a landlord. There's no, I know I get a higher return being a landlord versus, unlevered stock investing or something, but if you value your time, then I think landlording becomes a lower return opportunity. So for me, flipping, maybe still yes. Wholesaling, probably still yes, especially if I have partners involved in that business, yes. Buying a business, maybe. In an ideal world, I find a way to move myself to a tax haven where there are no taxes, like the Caymans or the Bahamas or something where there's literally no tax, where you can earn income and pay nothing on it. Here in Canada, we're at 55% if you're in my bracket. So that's a scary difference on your return. Even if you factor in that lifestyle could be worse in a tax haven, which it isn't because it's warm and beautiful on an island country. I think this probably lifestyle's better, but I just can't see an argument for staying here other than the difficulty of literally getting rid of all my stuff, detaching from our family and friends. That's hard, right? It's hard to move. So that holds us here, and it's a pretty good binding agent to just go somewhere new. It's scary, right? And there's a lot of things that go along with that. So yeah, I've been challenged with that decision as of late, thinking through a 5-year plan. It's like, well, I keep telling myself like, oh, well, maybe I could just pay the tax in Canada, and like maybe Canada's going to improve, and maybe these restrictions will lift, and we'll not become a communist society that goes after the rich. Maybe that will pivot, and it'll still be a great country to live in. It doesn't look that way, but it could happen. It's possible. Andrew says he hears you fine. Brock, hear you fine. Good. Okay, cool. Darius, so it really depends on the year, but even with the best deductions and the best delaying of tax, I have delayed a lot of tax, I'll be honest. Like a lot of my real estate portfolio I hadn't paid tax on, but now I'm selling it all. So I'm gonna probably have, like this upcoming year, we'll probably be paying, in the 7 figures for sure in tax, right? That sucks. Like to have a 7-figure tax bill, if you compound that over 50 years, we're talking about tens of millions of future dollars that I have to pay. Now, I think that money would be much better in my hands than in the government's hands. I could help a lot of people with that kind of money. I could start a fund, like a foundation with that kind of money, right? And it could be a situation where we're, 50 years from now, when I'm an old man, it would be a situation where I could literally like save a small city. That's the kind of money the government's gonna, and it's nothing for the government. They'll blow through it and just waste it on bureaucratic nothing. They'll accomplish nothing. $1 million doesn't get a park bench built. That's how incompetent the government is and how inefficient the government is. They're just horrible organization with a terrible motive for actually getting anything done. Anyway, it is what it is. Hopefully it goes to help some people, but yeah. So where would you move to make the tax savings worth it? Well, there are many tax havens around the world. You'd have to consider the pros and cons of every location. I kind of wish I had an expert in that field that I can consult with who knew my exact situation, who could say, hey, these are the 3 top places you should go. Difficulties with places like Monaco or the Grand Caymans, while they are 0% tax havens, like in the Caymans, you don't even file a return. It's like you don't even disclose what you made. That's the best. Like, this is what you should know about me, and this is how much I'm gonna pay. I like that about the Caymans. However, there are fees, and there are fees for keeping corporations alive, like annual filing fees. There are a bunch of other ways that they get you through, like import taxes and sales tax and things like that. And then cost of living, which to me is not a huge deal, but for someone who's had a lesser net worth, the Caymans or Monaco has an insane cost of living. Like $2 million in the Caymans gets you like a crappy property. So property values are expensive there, right? It's just wild that people, there's so much wealth there that's pushed everything so high. I guess it's doable. I could make a go of it there, for sure. But I don't know. I'm looking through a lot of different options. Costa Rica was an option for a bit. The more I look into their tax rules, the more I look into things, it doesn't look that great. The lifestyle looks pretty awesome there, but the tax code, just the Coles notes of what I've been reading, doesn't seem that great. Portugal was on the list of the top 20. Not that great. Dubai, again, was on that list of top 20. Some things in Dubai turned me off. Just a number of countries you could look at that are great for tax. Oh, I lost my voice. Okay. By the way, if you guys have any comments of places, I would love to, learn more. Send me some resources of places you can. I've been following Nomad Capitalist as an example of people that have fairly good information on tax havens. So D. Thomas says, did you see Meet Kevin's review his $52 million portfolio? Thoughts? I haven't actually seen that video. That's interesting. I know Kevin a couple years ago or a year ago did one and it was like almost 30 million or something. And I thought at the time when he did that, I still think Kevin's net worth at least 9 figures. Like his net worth's for sure 9 figures. Just the value of his course brand and YouTube brand, that business is generating what, $1.5 million a month right now? So he's got like a $20 million EBITDA probably across all of those. You know, if you link his like courses and his stock stuff and his YouTube, I'm just guessing, but like probably like $20 million a year EBITDA. So earnings before interest, taxes, depreciation, amortization. And typically those tech companies like his is a startup tech company with a great conversion rate and a great loyalty rate. Typically you're seeing 4 and 5, and like honestly he's a personal finance tech company, so I might even say it could sell as much as, if he stayed on board like on a 5 or 10 year contract, probably could get like a 10 times EBITDA, probably. There's probably some big, you know, someone who would num him up. So that means his brand, his course, everything else is worth 150 to 200 million dollars, just, you know, on a 10x, like a 5 to 10x multiple on his earnings there. So that alone is like, he's 1/5 of a billion just right there. And people don't value how that, there's a lot of value there. And it's a cash machine. Then he's got his actual portfolio, which, you know, I have so much respect for Kevin. I think that the thing I love about Kevin, above all other, you know, YouTubers that I follow, is his ability to adapt. He work through anything and adapt. I don't see anyone who does what he does with that level of work ethic. He can learn anything, but because he puts in the hours, he puts in the time. And that's one thing I really respect about Kevin, is he works for what he has, and he deserves all of what he has, which is probably, like I said, his net worth, you know, it's hard to put a value on it, but probably $250 million is his net worth, to be honest. Like if he was to sell out everything, and that's power. Because like in cash, I'm guessing he has like 50 million or 60 million, like you said, probably in stocks. I don't know. I know he got into Tesla super early. I didn't follow that, but my quick, you know, gut check, and I haven't went through his portfolio, so I have no idea, but like probably he's heavy in tech. Most of the videos that I watch, he loves his, you know, fintech stuff. He loves his EV, you know, Tesla stuff. So probably a little heavy in that sector. From like a overall portfolio perspective, but he's playing long on that, right? And that might pay off. Like he's on the cutting edge of, you know, investing in a lot of these cutting edge companies. So could that pay off? Maybe. I'm not as bullish on Tesla as he is, but especially these valuations, but I love it as a company. You know, I think Tesla's awesome. It's probably still, I don't know what percentage of his portfolio it is, but it used to be like half at one point of his portfolio, and that's ballsy. It takes a lot of balls to diamond hand that as it doubles and doubles again and doubles again. I don't know if I would have the balls to hold that. So mad respect for Kevin, nothing but respect for how far he's come. Even like a couple years ago, we were hanging out in London. He's evolved so much from then, and it's impressive to watch. William says, Mike, what about living in Austin, Texas, and 1031ing real estate? All these tax havens have crime or other weird stuff going on. You know, yes and no. Like there are a lot of tax havens you can pick up that don't have, like the Bahamas doesn't have a ton of crime. If you get on a rich person's island and you split an island with like 5 other people, like 5 mansions, you guys have all security, nothing's going on. Like you're having safety, it's all good, no tax. And you're a 45-minute ferry or an hour flight to a private airport in Miami, Florida. So there's some advantages to the Bahamas, I think, just because the proximity and the fact there's a bunch of ferries that go back and forth between the Bahamas and like the Florida Keys, like Miami area. So Miami to Florida, there's literally communities you can buy that have private airports in them, like right on the street you land in, and it's like 30 people have a private airport. You already got all your paperwork registered, so you can fly in and out anytime you want and just land like right in your subdivision and go into your house. So the airport communities are interesting. I think having a place in Miami like that and then having a place in the Bahamas is fantastic. If you had your own private runway, that would be sweet. Or just get on the ferry and you're like an hour from mainland civilization. I think I really like Florida. If Florida didn't have Biden's federal taxes hanging over it, as a state, I love what they stand for. I love that there's a lot of young blood there, a lot of old money there too. The state of the newlyweds and the nearly dead. That's what they call Florida, right? So I've been to Florida lots. I love it. My in-laws have a place in Central Florida, so I've got family there too, like snowbird family. It's, you know, if it had a better tax environment, Florida's definitely was on the top of my list. I just, I don't know. I mean, there's like Puerto Rico is pretty interesting too, because you can have a U.S. passport and you get all those tax advantages, zero capital gains, none. That's interesting because you have a U.S. passport. But then there's hurricane season, and it's like, ugh, do I really want to own a property down there that when they go through devastating hurricanes, don't want to be around that when they have power outages and things. There's just challenges. Though Puerto Rico is part of the U.S., you know, there's challenges. So yeah, I don't know. There's options for sure. Yeah, I mean, 1031 exchange is an interesting beast. Actually, I think that, yeah, Florida, of all the places, I like Florida the most in the U.S. So it's actually it's been on my top 5 list for a while, but just the federal taxes suck. So you'd have to find a way to shelter everything into a 1031 exchange. You could, yeah, you could do that. Canada doesn't have that, unfortunately. You sell a property, you buy something else, tax again, no sheltering. Canada sucks, unfortunately. Unless you're like, if you make less than 100 grand a year and you plan to retire on less than like $2 million, Canada's amazing. Like for the 99%, Canada's awesome. Free healthcare, amazing services, super safe, tons of stuff that's like social nets that are there to help us. You know, great. In general, people are fairly nice and kind here in Canada. There's very low crime. If you live in a good area, like in my area here, very low crime. There are pockets that have bad crime, but like if you can afford a nice house in a good area, it's great. I understand all the customs and laws here. That's a huge competitive advantage. I don't know anything about tax law in other countries, right? So that's a huge hurdle or barrier to leaving, right? I have competitive advantages here in Canada. I have deep networks. In the real estate world, I'm, you know, in the top 100 probably here in Canada, or I was at one point, right? So those are competitive advantages that I would lose by leaving. So the question is the tax savings justified? 7 figures a year is a lot. I could definitely tone it down the year after next, probably get it down to like, you know, low to mid 6 figures. But still, I mean, that's more than I spend to live. I pay in tax, right? So such is life. Such is life, guys. What do you do? What do you do? Andrew says Texas or Florida. Texas has some amazing real estate and some great capitalist values. So I like that about Texas. Florida has a similar vibe, but you've got the beach, you've got the water, you've got that coastal humidity. I like Florida. I haven't spent much time in Texas, so I can't even honestly compare, but I hear the dead heat is brutal. The property taxes are unreal in Texas. So you do pay like sales and property taxes like at the yin yang, but real estate's so affordable in Texas. Like you get a nice estate for like 800 grand, and Texas goes so far. $1 million in Texas gets you such a nice place. And like my house here is probably a couple $1 million, and like it just goes so much further down there, right? So yeah, there's, you know, pros and cons for sure. I have to spend some time before I can make an educated opinion. So I'll leave that on the bucket list for next year. Hey Chad, how you doing? Motor says, hey Mike, another week, another Wednesday live. That's right. We've been doing this for what? My first one ever had Graham Stephan on it, and that was 2018 or 17? 2018 maybe? Early 2018? I don't know. We're going on 4 years. Coming up on 4 years here pretty soon. So it's been a good little ride of us doing these weekly shows. I just shoot the shit. Some of them are longer than others. Today I don't have anything really planned, nothing really to say, so I'll go with the Q&A for another couple of minutes, and then I'll probably wrap it up. This might be a short one today. Oh, I forgot to mention, the last 3 days my stock portfolio is up $300,000. I had 3 major green days in a row, including today. So I'm up like almost 300 grand in 3 days, which is sweet. My new egg losses completely gone, recovered that entire $1.5 million that was lost. It's great, you know, it's awesome to to have that feeling of like the comeback. I thought I destroyed my portfolio. I did not do as well as the S&P 500, though if you track me from July 15th when I closed out that short that blew up my account on Newegg, from July 15th to now, I've outperformed the S&P 500. And before the Newegg incident, if you track me from when I started the portfolio to just before the Newegg incident, I was outpacing the S&P 500. So in both cases, been outperforming the S&P 500, but again, blew up my entire account. So you can't remove one trade and say, hey, I'm the best trader ever. No, I made a big mistake. Thankfully, it was in the first 5-6 months of ever trading options, and did not realize that I made some fatal mistakes. You can watch that video to see what I learned and what I did differently. Hey, it's a super chat. Chad Wagner says, hey Mike, what is your best advice to scale a portfolio in a small town? I don't make a lot of money, but I want to grow. The 300K is cash. So I think you mean in cash. What's the best way to scale? I think there's a huge competitive advantage to being a big fish in a small town. You have a lot of things going for you when you're the big guy in town, especially if you're a good business operator. People will respect you, and as a result, you'll have some competitive advantages. When you are the biggest landlord in town, then you get to call a lot of the shots, right? You'd have a list of tenants, you'd know who to avoid and who to rent to. You could potentially have like the bylaw people in your, some friendships with those people, so they would help make your managing of your portfolio easier. As well as if you know the market cold in a small town and you know every street and you know the value on every street, you could knock doors and become familiar as the person that buys property off market to save on realtor fees. And that would be a huge competitive advantage because everyone would just call you when they want to sell their house for cash. Like, hey, your basement's flooded, call me. Your house had a fire, no problem. You got an annoying tenant you can't get rid of, whatever. You want to just cash out, give me a call. Forget the realtors. In a small town, you don't have a lot of competition. There's a lot less competition because the international money is all in Toronto and spread out from there to Brampton and London and now Windsor and whatever. But the smaller towns, they don't have as much heat. So you're not competing against institutional money. You're not competing against international money. You're not competing against bigger fish. You get to compete against other mom and pop landlords, which gives you potentially a competitive advantage. As well, the best thing of all about investing in small towns, this is my favorite part, is as the big fish, you set the comps. All the comparables for your properties are your own. I used to have 3 properties on one street, and I would use the one to create the comparable for the other 2. So I had 3 properties in the same street. There was like 15 or 20 on the street. I was actually in control, because I owned the most on that street, of the prices on that street. And if I sold something for a new price, I would unlock a comp from my other ones. And that's the same thing here as a small town landlord. You could lever up that 300 grand right off the bat. 20% down on 300 grand means you could buy 1.5 million in real estate. Let's call it 1.4 million in real estate because your closing costs and whatnot. But if you bought $1.4 million in real estate, let's say you took your 300,000 cash and your 1.4 million, let's say you're in a small town. So you're probably buying houses for like 200, 300,000 if they're a bit distressed. You'll probably find some single families and duplexes and stuff in that price range. But you buy them for a good price because you're going to fix them up, right? You're going to add value to them. They got problems and issues. You're going to solve those problems and issues, right? So let's hope that by the time you're done, in a 2-year time frame, you've bought smart enough that you're not going to get the same appreciation in the small towns, but you will get the lift of inflation. You will get, a slight market appreciation. And the best part is you can fix up yours, and if you can sell one of the properties, so you got like 4 or 5 to start, you can sell one of them, you can create comps for your other 4 and then get refinances on the other 4, pull that cash out and buy more. So that's the beautiful thing, is that in Canada, I think pretty much everywhere, if you refinance a property and don't sell it, you can pull the equity out of that property tax-free. So that let's say those properties you buy them for 1.4, you get a loan from the bank on your unsecured line of credit, you do 100,000 renovation on them, and then now the portfolio is worth say 30% more, 40% more because you add some value to them. Now your portfolio is 2.5 million. You could refinance 80% loan to value on those properties, and that would allow you to pull out, I don't know, let's say it's 2.5 million, you'd be able to pull out like, what's that? Oh, $2 million, right? So you pull out $2 million. Again, you pay off the debt you already have, I guess, on the portfolio. So you're left with like, I don't know, give or take almost $1 million. You could re-lever up again and buy 4 or 5 more and do the same thing. So that's the idea, is that tax-free, you could build a pretty big portfolio. And in a small town, you have some advantages for sure. Are there disadvantages to investing in small towns? Sure. I think the the advantages outweigh the disadvantages. But there is inherent market risk. If that small town is dependent on like, you know, some factory or a mining distribution or something, and that's the largest employer, and like mining just like tanks and they close it, the town is dead. And the infrastructure might not be able to even sustain those houses. So there's definite risk investing in small towns for sure. But if you're bullish on the area and you live there and you understand it and you're familiar, there's nothing wrong with investing in those smaller towns where you get some great cash flow and you can be the big fish that gives you some competitive advantages. And you get to be known as that person. And once you're known as that person that buys a lot of properties and you're the largest landlord in that area, then you have a competitive advantage. People will just call you. They're like, oh, it's Dave. Dave's the guy who always buys houses off market and whatever. And they'll call you, right? Because they know you're the one that can close in cash. So it's about a brand that you can build. And in a small town, your brand can become, you know, top tier really quick. So that's an advantage for sure. Let me know how it goes if you get some properties under your belt and whatnot. I'm curious to hear. Corey says, hey Mike, what do you think of investing in private mortgages in Canada? First mortgages and promissory notes. Corey, for sure. It's a fantastic way to, so as an investor in you know, private mortgage notes, let's call it, it's very passive. Is it a lower return than owning the real estate itself? Yes. Is it easier? Yes. So there's, I think it's a great way to retire, or a great way to supplement. Like if you're working a full-time job and you don't have a lot of time, that's where mortgage lending can make a lot of sense. I was a little bit leery about mortgage lending as we watched inflation hit all-time highs, but it seems like there's a bit of tape, like the government isn't spending as much as they were before. And so what we're seeing is a bit of a pullback on those inflation numbers. We have to continue to watch them. The challenge with private lending is if inflation runs rampant, then you're stuck with a loan at a fixed rate. And let's say inflation's 8% and you've lent out at 10, then your real return is 2, right? That said though, I know people who have invested in equities in the last year and their stock portfolio is worth, up 10. And so I don't know. It's hard to beat, when inflation is high, it's hard to beat those returns. Not all businesses can pass that on as easily. So there's pros and cons. I like private lending as a passive way to, supplement retirement income. It's really easy and nice. You can get some juicy, rates. It's way better than investing in like government bonds, which are garbage. I don't know why anyone has any bonds or treasury bills or any of that fixed income garbage in their portfolio, period. I would definitely do private lending over bonds in your portfolio. A lot of fund managers put like 40%, like you go to the bank and they set you up with a conservative portfolio and it's 40% bonds and fixed income, 60% equities. That's retarded. I'm sorry. Like I worked as a financial advisor and I'm telling you it's retarded. Inflation will destroy that. Even if inflation didn't destroy that, it's a horrible return and it doesn't pay off in a recession. You're better to take 10%, go 100% equities and put 10% of your portfolio in a hedge like VIX. So if there's a volatility spike or a recession, anything happens, there's fear in the market, the VIX spikes 200-300%, that's your hedge. And then you just sell that portion of your equity portfolio, that 10% of your equity portfolio, and you cover all of your downside. Hedge with equity only, then you'll get a great return. Bonds drag down your return. Bonds are paying like 1% right now. Like at best, you're getting like 2-3% in municipal bonds. That's a horrible return. Don't have any of your money in bonds. The worst part is there's trillions of dollars in Canada and probably more in the US in portfolios that are like 70-30, 70% equity, 30% bonds. It's a huge market of just garbage money tied up into garbage returns. And they, like the big insurance companies like Sun Life, park that money at like 1%. They're lending against hotels and like giant big deals at 1%. And that's part of what's driving the real estate market up, is these large real estate funds get to borrow this money that's supposed to be super safe, the super safe bond money. They're like, well, we got to put the money somewhere. We can't put it in the bank. So they lend it out to super safe opportunities, right? And then they basically pay you 1% return. I hate bonds. I hate fixed income in this environment, in this low interest rate but high inflation environment. I don't like it. Get rid of bonds, do the private lending instead. You get a much higher return with a similar risk profile. Next question was, and with promissory notes, Corey, just be careful. You really do your due diligence on the person. A lot of people get burned with promissory notes. So just be careful. Get a business general security of assets, get a personal pledge. Even then, like you've got to make sure you got deep roots on this person because they could just disappear like that, right? You hear a lot of horror stories. So just be careful. For me, it's like social media profile is everything. Are they posting 8 times a day? Do they have deep networks that make it hard for them to leave? Could I destroy them if they didn't pay me? And if they didn't pay me, would that destruction equal the amount that I borrowed? So if you let someone who's got an Instagram account, you let them 100 grand, they just cancel their account, they don't care, they have no brand, then that's scary, right? So promissory notes, be very, very careful. I've been burned before. I was able to recover the money, but I lost a lot of the interest. Doing promissory notes with family members. You would think, gotta be able to trust family. No, can't trust family. Can't trust friends. You gotta be careful. There are a few people that I have lent to that it goes okay, but yeah, if you can get on security, that's ideal. Pergy says, why 1 billion net worth goal versus 100 million? People tend to feel happier the more money they make, only up to a certain point. Yeah, I mean, it's a great point. 100 million is just as good as a billion. I just figure by the time I get to 100 million, the way inflation's running, it might not mean as much as a billion. So I'm just going for the B. Why not? I'm not throwing myself out. Like, I'm not grinding like I used to. So, yeah. Motor says, did you catch the government of Canada put out a news bulletin? Looks like they're coming for unvaccinated, federally regulated employees, like bank employees. Might really be time to look at leaving the bank. Geez, eh? I don't understand, like, I keep saying this on the channel again and again, and I'll say it now. The science doesn't support going after unvaccinated people. They are not the ones that are traveling right now and spreading this new Omni variant, or whatever you want to call it, Omicron or whatever. The next one will be ABC variant, whatever. The variants will continue to exist. We will deal with this for the next decade. And vaccines are not perfect, just like the flu shot wasn't perfect at preventing anything. At best, we're talking 40 to 60% effective. What we know is that if you've had exposure to the virus, if you're one of the 1 in 4 people who've already had COVID, 1 in 4 have already had it, 25%, you should be exempt for at least a year from the vaccine. Fact. Go take an antibody test to confirm if you have positive antibodies to the virus, and you're safe. You can literally travel the border right now. If you've had COVID in the last 6 months, that's as good as a vaccine passport to travel right now. That's a joke. It should be a year at least. But at least they're admitting now, hey, previous exposure is the #1 best thing you can possibly do to survive this survive this virus. That's just a fact. So exposure is the best way. And if you're, like myself, a healthy young male in the 19 to 29 category, guess what? On the million people that got the vaccine in that age bracket, we have a few thousand with myocarditis. That's a lot, right? We're talking like 900,000 vaccines given out in that age category and a couple thousand myocarditis. Do you know how in that 1929 male age category, do you know what the statistical likelihood of having any severe reaction to COVID actually was? First off, the chance of getting COVID was like 10% on that age group. And then let's call it 25% just to be higher. It's mostly running rampant in the old age homes and stuff, but let's just say you had a 1 in 4 chance of getting COVID, which is high. You probably didn't, but let's just say you did, the worst case scenario. In the 19 and 29 age category, you had a 1 in 7,000 chance of ICU severe complications. That's not death. That's just going to the ICU because you're pretty sick. And now we're talking about people having severe, the risk to reward doesn't make sense in certain age categories. I'm pro-vaccine for, someone who's 55 and has asthma, or if you're old. Yeah, the data suggests the risk of COVID, it's pretty high for you. If you're an 80-year-old individual, the average age of death, I think it's the median age of death in Canada is 81. You know what the average age of death in Canada is in total? It's 80. So we're talking the age of death and the age of death of COVID are the same. Old, gonna die anyway. I hate to say it like that, but the people dying from COVID are old. It's not a pandemic for the young. It's the fucking flu for the young. It's a bad flu, but it's the flu. We're making mountains out of molehills because old people have a lot of money, a lot of political power and capital, and they have a lot of control. And so they're afraid. So they want to stick needles in 5-year-olds' arms, the 5 to 11-year-old age. They're line up your 5-year-old, get him a vaccine, get her a vaccine. We don't even know how it's going to react on these 5-year-olds. We know that when we injected 19 to 29-year-olds, we saw thousands of cases of myocarditis here in Canada. That's a real issue. That's heart problems for the rest of your life. We wouldn't have had thousands of 19 to 29-year-olds having those kind of complications from COVID. We just aren't seeing that. So it's potentially, we'd have to look at the data. A lot of the data hasn't been released and hasn't been studied. No one's paying to study this data because, why would you go against what the government's saying, which is vaccines are good, get your vaccine no matter what. Don't look at the downsides. There are no downsides. It's only upsides. Not true. There are risks and there are benefits. And for most of the population, we'll call it 70% of Canada, there's probably a good probability that it's better benefit for them than risk. But the blanket doesn't apply to everyone. I would say there's a good quarter to 30% of the population where the vaccine introduces more risk than benefit for that individual. Maybe not for society at large. Maybe you're protecting more old people by vaccinating those younger people. I haven't seen any data. No one sent me, of all my Instagram followers, of all you guys following me, no one has sent me any credible data to show that transmission rates between asymptomatic vaccinated versus unvaccinated individuals, if there's any difference in transmission. There isn't. If you're asymptomatic, guess what? You're not transmitting this. So it's only the people who have symptoms. And what you're finding is people who are vaccinated don't show the symptoms as soon. So they're spreading around a viral load, feeling okay, like I'm a little run down, but I have the shot, so I probably don't have COVID, I'm fine. And they're walking around spreading it. And the people who are, unvaccinated are staying home and quarantining, hopefully. And they're at least noticing they're having symptoms sooner and feeling shittier sooner. And it keeps them at home, which is what you want. You want the people who are symptomatic to stay at home, whether they're vaccinated or unvaccinated. The problem is the vaccine is giving these people a sense of confidence that they can take their mask off and go sit out indoors and eat lunch or whatever and go to the bar and hang out. And what you're seeing is I'm walking into places, there's no masks at all. That's a problem. They're like, oh, we're vaccinated, we're good. You're 60% effective. If you're a 60-year-old, there's like 60, 70-year-olds sitting out at dinner. If you're a 70-year-old dude sitting out at dinner who's had double vaccine, guess what? You're a higher risk of dying from this than the 20-year-old that you're pointing at. You're like, hey, he's unvaccinated. He has a lower chance of dying from this, even unvaccinated, than you do. Like, you're at high risk of dying. Even if you've had the vaccine, you can still die from COVID. You're not cured. Like, it's not back to normal. That's some bullshit propaganda. There is no back to normal. People will keep dying from this, vaccine or not. It's not perfect. It's like 40 to 60% effective, depending on the person. 40 to 70% effective. It depends on the age group. Each age group is different in effectiveness. I'm not a medical expert, but looking at data would seem to make the most sense. What I'm seeing is that politicians are making decisions based on public polls. So they're polling people and saying, hey, what do you feel like? What do you think? And the population isn't making any decisions based on data. They're making it based on the propaganda that they're watching. And so it's like a wheel of like fear mongering that ends up in a cycle downwards of like, everyone's afraid, so everyone wants more restrictions. The politicians just survey people and say, do you want more restrictions? Yes, we want more restrictions. Okay, more restrictions. They're not looking at any data at all. It's just public opinion. That's what's driving a lot of the decision making right now. And that's a problem. We should be digging into the data. And blanket statements don't work. Blanket rules don't work. It needs to be customized solutions for each demographic and each problem, and each solution needs to be customized. And there are people who have allergies and should have exemptions, and there should be a ton of exemptions. I don't know, it just pisses me off that a lot of bad policy decisions, but that's just government in general. I haven't seen government work uncorrupted and, making quality decisions based on data in a long time. So nothing new. Lazy government picks the easy solution, the one that's most profitable for them. Easy, usually not based by data, whatever's easy for them, and whatever works in their best interest in most cases. Hey Mike, where do you keep your money when saving up for a rental property? With all this inflation, do you keep it in a savings account? Yeah, I mean, at the moment, what are your choices, right? Like you can put it in crypto, but then you've got the volatility in crypto. So when you need to buy the rental property, it could be down in a down cycle, down 40%. So that's the challenge of being in Bitcoin or Ethereum. There is that huge amount of volatility. Like we saw last week, there was that one night last weekend, I think it was, where we had a 20%, Saturday, a 20% drop in 10 hours, 12 hours. 20% drop in a day? That's a huge amount of volatility in one day. It's rebounded mostly now, but we're talking a 20% drop in one day. What if you had to buy a rental property that's closing Monday? You had to cash out at 20% down, that would suck. So don't save for a house in crypto. I wouldn't do that. I could see you putting it in the stock market in an Interactive Brokers account, and a safe place to park your money would be a bull put spread on the S&P 500, but super tight and out of the money with buying and selling a put. So you're in a position where you have a stop loss and your max loss is like say 3% or 2%, and your upside is 1 to 2% a month. That's a place you could park your, let's say you could be super conservative, call it a 0.5% a month. That's a 6% growth annualized with stop losses. So you buy and sell a put so that you're in a position where you're super close on that. You know, you buy the VTI, you know, on a down day, you might sell this, and you lock your money in a contract for 2 months or 3 months, do it every 2 months, let's say, and the decay alone will make you, it will beat inflation. So you'll be able to be hedged against inflation. You're entirely liquid. You can close it out anytime you want. You have a stop loss in place, so your max loss is 1, 2, 3%. You're in a good situation. That's where I'd park my money over putting it in a bank account, is using options contracts to ride the S&P 500 with stop losses. So that's the safest place to put your money right now, in my opinion. I can't think of anything else that has no volatility, but that pays well. Private lending maybe, but then it's hard to recall that money. Let's say you need that money for a deal and the person that you lent it to isn't ready to pay the mortgage back. Not a great option. Yeah, I think the best option is using options. Stock options is the best way. And ideally you just buy like the S&P 500 on a down day and just have a super tight band out of the money and you're good to go. Hey Mike, what exchange would you use to buy crypto? There's so many exchanges you can use to buy crypto. I'm not an expert in this at all, but there are a million different exchanges that you can use to buy. There are exchanges with a KYC, there are exchanges without a KYC, there are hard wallets you can use to connect. So many different ways. You can use ATMs to buy and sell. If like you don't understand technology at all, you could literally get like a hard wallet and go to like an ATM and like the fees would be insane, but you could put cash in and get Bitcoin. So there's lots of ways to get invested in crypto. I still think cryptocurrency should be a small percentage of your overall portfolio right now. That might change in the future, but I think right now it should be no more than 5 to 10% of your entire portfolio. That's just me right now. That may change over time. If you're really bullish and you can handle the volatility swings, feel free to put more in, but that's just my personal opinion. I think we're not there yet. I don't know. Which coins do I like? I don't know. Like I like all of the top 10, like your Ethereum, your Bitcoin, your ADA. As far as like altcoins, I like UOS Ultra. I'm super bullish on that one. So the ticker is UOS. They have some great partnerships. Their market cap is tiny compared to what it could be. They will overtake Steam, I think, as the gaming platform where you can use these tokens to trade games now. It's not locked to your computer anymore. So as a gamer at heart, love that one. You can get in right now like $1.50 a token. It should be like $10 a token, so it's got a ways to go yet. I have friends who got in at like 8 cents, 10 cents. So it's gone, you know, it's gonna be 100 bagger for them probably. Corey, no problem. Danny says, hey Mike, what was your lowest point in your life and what made you get yourself out of that position? Lowest point in my life is probably when I was a kid. I had some shitty times when I was a kid. I bounced around a lot. We moved like 15 times as a kid. I went to live with my mom's ex-boyfriend for 5-6 years. So I didn't live with my mom or my dad. CAS was involved and I got bounced around as a kid. I had a shitty childhood. So there was lots of low points as a kid. Spent some time in a psychologist's office, you know, trying to explain why life was so shitty and why my hand was, you know, dealt with shitty, but just pull myself up with the bootstraps. Another really bad time in my life was when I was grinding with all the rental properties. I think it was in sometime in I had a really bad time in 2017 where I was hospitalized for dehydration. I was sick. I just pulled over the side of the road, threw up and kept going because I had 2 appraisals and I was just grinding to get the work done for the appraisal. And I felt like if I didn't achieve that goal and get it refinanced, I didn't have the money to finish the renovations. So I was just like way beyond overextended, trying to grow. And I had like 4 or 5 properties trying to get to 10. When I did that 0 to 10 property push, there was a point in there where like I broke down. And I'd been going like every day from 8 to 5, 8 to 6 at the office. I'd drive from the like while I was on lunch break taking a shit, all that I was doing like rental property, managing the contractors, tenants, all that. And then after work till 1 or 2 in the morning, I would go. And on weekends, I would do 36 hours straight. I just pushed myself way too hard. And that was a low point. And the reason that was so bad was because I chose that for myself. You think that'd make it feel better, but I was like, damn, like I'm killing myself for money, for what? When my first daughter was born, I was pushing myself really hard, and I took a break for a few months off. That was great. So how did I get out of it? I made a choice to get out of it. As a kid, you know, you don't have a lot of control, right? If you have shit parents and shit guardians and you're poor, life sucks. But once you're an adult, you are in control. You can change your circumstance. So that's what I love most about, you know, as an adult. I think that being in control is key. I've always looked at money as a way to control your life, and it is. It's more than the oil in the engine and the gas in your tank. It can buy you time. It can change your whole circumstance. So that's why FIRE for me became like the focus when I was like 17 years old. It was like, work sucks, life sucks. How do I make life not suck? And it looked like for 90% of people, life sucks. I'm like, how do I not be that? I want to have the better life. And so I chose that, and I continue to choose that every day. And I'm blessed with the opportunities that have fallen before me, and then I get to continue to have these opportunities, and I can't squander them, which means I have to work at things and continue to build them, and there's fun in that. So good question, Danny, thanks. Kevin, I don't know about the world being over soon. I certainly hope a great reset is not coming, but Fergie says, what's the largest drawdown you've ever had on your stock percentage-wise, not including options? Try my best to not paper handle on my winner's run. So when I was 18, I invested in a bunch of mining companies and like resource companies and just a bunch of shitty companies. I was 18 years old, buying a bunch of stocks, and I used leverage to do it too. So I bought stocks with money that wasn't mine. And back in the day, I was using Questrade. This is like maybe 2010 and 2011 maybe. And Questrade back then charged you 8% interest to borrow on margin. It's not like the world today where Interactive Brokers charges me 1% interest. It was 800% more expensive to borrow back then. And I got in deep, and I basically blew up the whole portfolio. I invested in a bunch of shitty growth penny stocks, trying to moonshot to buy, you know, my second rental property, and I just blew my portfolio up and lost everything. So as a percentage, I had zero, like infinite loss. I lost everything because of leverage. But more recently was probably that Newegg incident. Like I blew up my account with Newegg. That was at the lowest point in the day. I had dropped like half my portfolio value at the lowest point of that day. So a 50% drop, 7-figure drop is brutal in that portfolio. I isolate, so my dividend portfolio doesn't touch my stock options portfolio. I keep them separate. That way if things are going really bad in my options portfolio, I can't steal from my dividend portfolio to cover losses. I keep them separate entirely. And it's smart. You should set up multiple accounts. Like you should have a high risk account that you can risk in. Have your steady dividend account. Multiple accounts is important for risk management, to not blow yourself up, because you can let your ego get into like, hey, my thesis is right, just double down, triple down, stay the course. And eventually you have to realize sometimes your thesis is wrong. And that's why we hold 50 stocks instead of 3, because sometimes we're wrong. And when we're wrong, when do you decide, hey, I'm wrong? Like at a certain point, you have to be like, hey, shit, I'm wrong. I need to close this trade and cut my losses. At a certain point, that has to happen. That's why we have a lot of small positions, no more than 2 or 3% in every company, because we don't want to have those. You don't want to lose money. The most important thing in stock investing is to cut your losses. Don't lose big. It's hard to come back from huge losses. It's easy to come back from a small loss. You're down 5%, close the trade out. You can come back 5%, no problem. But you let it ride all the way down to 50% loss. You need 100% gain to come back from a 50% loss. $100 share goes down to 50. If you get a 50% gain now, you just drop 50%. If you get a 50% gain, you only have $75 a share. You're still down. So you need 100% to come back from a 50% loss. Losses require, depends how much you lose. The less you lose, the less of a double you need. But the more you lose, the more you need to come back. So don't lose money. That's the most important rule. Stop loss. Thanks, Danny. CK says, if you had 10 to 20K cash, how would you scale with investments, crypto, real estate? 10 to 20 grand is not a lot of money. Probably I would do crypto. If I was trying to moonshot it, I'd pick some really cool crypto stuff. Stock options are interesting too, because you could be long on some quality companies and control 3 times the money you have. So your 20K could control you $60,000 in shares if you wanted to really use options. You could go 10x with options if you wanted to. If you're really careful of your stop losses, but you can have a lot more exposure that way. Until you get enough money saved up that you can buy a rental property. I think real estate is the best way to build wealth early on. Your first million, real estate's the fastest way to build that. Unless you have a business you can invest in. Like if you invest in marketing and like you have an Amazon FBA business, you can invest in inventory, put your money in that because you get a way better return. If you have a business at all that's very profitable, invest your money there first. Real estate is like a business, but just a super safe business, hard to lose money in real estate. So that's why I like real estate. It's easy to make a lot of money because you're levered 5-to-1 with cheap bank debt. It's hard to lose when you do it well in real estate. Now you can lose money, it can happen. You can buy the wrong type of houses. I've had it happen. I have one house that we had a bad contractor we hired, terrible management company. Wish I never hired them. They blew up the foundation. They were French draining it and it collapsed. And that house we will lose money on. The whole house collapsed. Like we had to lift the house up and rebuild the foundation on it. Huge, really expensive, like 200 grand renovation. We'll never make it back on that property that we bought for 160. I should have just walked away, let the insurance fight it out, and just sold it for the land value. But I wanted to try to recover, and that was a mistake. I was trying to make it work. Should have just sued everyone and walked away. The worst deal I ever did. But I've had other issues where like I've had major roof issues, overcame it. Floods, overcame it. Fire, overcame it. But this one I couldn't overcome. It was too expensive, and I made the wrong decisions. It happens sometimes. But of say 100 properties I've been involved in, 99 were great. So yeah. Please leave a like. Thanks, William. Big Boss says, do you have any investments in DeFi, or is it not worth the risk for you? Big Boss, I struggle. Is it worth it to get into time and jade and, all that snow shit or whatever? I see all the posts. I see a lot of posts in my network. People send me stuff about DeFi and how great it is. The APYs are intensely enticing. And the way you win in the DeFi space is you get in early. That's it. Like a lot of them are just shit projects and shit coins paying like 10 million % APY. If you can get in early enough and get your principal back and leave some in there to let it ride, let that stuff ride risk-free, I can see that being an okay strategy. But I wouldn't be in it long-term. I'd be in it short-term to get my money back and then leave whatever profits in there. That's something that you can make great. I know a lot of people making great money in the space. I got like half a dozen friends that are doing it right now, and they're making bank. So DeFi is an interesting space. There's some quality DeFi projects that pay 8, 10, 12% staking. And like I would definitely say get into those projects. There are a bunch of garbage projects too that are paying 10,000% or 1,000,000% APY. With 1,000,000% APY, you're in the project for 2 days and you get your money back. Like that's how much interest they're paying out in their shitcoins. So if you can get out before the shitcoin collapses, or before it like kind of, oftentimes it takes months just before it sort of stabilizes. But if you can get it at the right time, one of them's called time, one of the shitcoins that I see a lot of people investing in. So yeah, then definitely, or node farming too is interesting. There's definitely opportunities there for sure. It's beyond my risk appetite right now. I might take a little bit of money and play around with it. The accounting on it is a nightmare because you're in and out of these shitcoins all, like there's like the way they're paying it out, it's just a lot of accounting to track it all and pay all your tax on it. So I just stayed out of it for the most part. I liked it with options trading. I can just send my statements to a bookkeeper. By the way, I'm looking for a new bookkeeper for my interactive brokers account. So if anyone knows someone who's a good bookkeeper who I can just send the statements to, can do it all, let me know. Something ideally like $30 an hour would be ideal. Who understands like basic options and can figure out the tax gain or loss on my portfolio. That'd be cool. Hit me up on Instagram at Mike Rosehart if you know of someone who is that person. I do need a bookkeeper for that corp that just does the trading. Thanks, Big Boss. Appreciate that. How do you invest 60 to 100,000 in real estate? You could partner with someone, or you could buy a small property and start from there using leverage. So you put 60 to $100,000 down payment and borrow the other 80% loan to value from the bank, and that 100,000 could buy you a $500,000 piece of property, approximately. Hey Mike, what would be the best strategy to achieve financial freedom as quick as possible? It depends on who you are, what your goals are, and your strengths. And one of the ways, I think the fastest way is to build a business. Business is the fastest way to build wealth. But the second, if you don't have any skills, don't have any business ideas, real estate is my favorite way to do that. I think once you've built up a bit of wealth, then you look at crypto and stocks. You could invest in some altcoin crypto and you could let it could pop off. I don't know. I do think that there have been a lot of millionaires made through crypto, but it's a very moonshot type of investment. So like 90 people are going to lose money and 10 are going to make money. So, whereas in real estate, 99 people are going to make money versus one's going to lose it. So the probability of profit is much, much higher in real estate versus like crypto. Hong Kong Fui says, you said a couple weeks ago that if you like a stock, then a lot of the time you prefer to buy calls than to own shares outright. Why is that? So the reason that is I could buy leap calls 1 year out or 2 years out that entitle me to call those shares to me at the current price for like 1/10 of the current share price. And it doesn't tie up a lot of my equity. So I could have the right to call $1 million in Tesla shares, let's say 2 years from now, at the current price right now. But I could get that for $100 a share. So instead of having to buy the shares for $1,000 a share and tie up $1 million, I can tie up only $100,000 in this call option contracts. And if at any point in the next 2 years, Tesla moons for even like 2 weeks, let's say it just jumps 50% and it goes back down, in that time where it's coming up, you could sell your option contract to someone else and make 500%, 1,000% return. And so on a 50% Tesla jump, you might make 500% instead of 50%. So you're getting 10x the return. You don't have near as much of your capital to control the same amount of shares. So if you're bullish on something, leap calls are a much better way to ride that growth for a lot less of your margin and capital tied up. So that's why calls are fantastic. But if you're not so bullish, then just owning the equity and collecting a dividend can make more sense sometimes. Depends on the company, depends on the play, but sometimes it can make sense to use call options as opposed to owning the physical equity because it doesn't tie up near as much of your own money. Hope that helps. Okay, I'm gonna wrap this up. To answer your question, I don't even know. More than half of my portfolio, probably 70% of my portfolio on average is in quality blue chip S&P 500 type stuff. Yeah, of my stock portfolio. All right, everyone, thanks so much for watching. Appreciate everyone for tuning in for the last hour. And remember, as always, the secret to unlocking a wealthier you is to spend less, earn more, and maximize returns in the difference. Those are the 3 levers in your control. That's it. That's how you build wealth. That's the secret formula to wealth building. What you spend, what you can earn, and the returns on your money. Those are the 3 things, 3 levers to play with. Everyone follow me along on Instagram at Rosehart, and we'll see you online. See you next week. Bye, everyone.